Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with a family of seekers, and we're reading through the Gita, talking about its relevance to our lives. And today we're in this mode where we're just doing one verse each day because these verses are so nectarian and so applicable if we really kind of dive into them and extrapolate the nectar. So that's what we're trying to do today and every day. But we're just going to do one verse again today. And oh, before I start, I want to talk again about the Gita in Action retreat in New Vrindavan, September 5th through the 7th. Please come and do what we do here with us in person for a whole weekend, which is just connect with this ancient literature, connect with each other, connect with ourselves. The theme is, oh, I forget the theme. Do you remember the theme, Brittany? It is
Journey to worthiness.
Journey to Worthiness.
Yeah.
So if you've ever not felt good enough or felt like, you know, low, we're going to get you back up there with this retreat. We're going to get you back up there with all of the things. So please come. It's on the New Vrindavan website. You can also text me for a link. And if you need a discount or anything, please let me know because we want everybody to be able to come that wants to come and share in this sacred sangha. So Brittany's going to be there teaching yoga. Vedasar, many of you know Vedasar, is going to be co-facilitating it with me. So it's going to be great. Okay, so with that, let's start. 520. We're starting at 523 today, chapter 5, verse 23. And we're going to be talking about tolerance. And I know this is a principle that we talk about a lot. It's kind of a universal spiritual principle. But the way that we're going to talk about it today, we're really going to dive into what tolerance actually means and when we can apply tolerance in our lives, identify that we need to apply tolerance in our lives, and then what that can do for us. And I'm hoping that after today, we can walk out of here with a couple more tools in our toolbox to kind of combat this, some of the obstacles of material existence, and by doing so, grow closer to God. So that's kind of the goal. And I have some fun examples in here to share with you guys that are actually still a little bit fresh. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to share too. So with that, let's just get into it. 523. I'll share my screen. And Stella, do you want to read 523 for us?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Before giving up this present body, if
Oh,
one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world.
wonderful. Thank you. I'm so glad you weren't reading off the screen because I had 423 up. So this is 523. And thank you for reading that. So again, a topic that seemingly we've talked about a lot, but just like we were talking about before class, we can't talk about these topics enough. Every time you hear them, it will resonate with you in a different way, or you'll have a new collection of experiences to relate to them and to learn from and to grow from. And we're even going to dive into this. We're going to dive into this pretty deep today. We're going to talk about this the whole class. So we're really going to get into it. But what's happening here is Arjuna's, asking a real question. He's saying, even if I know that chasing material pleasures leads to misery, why doesn't that knowledge make my desires disappear? Does that ever happen to anyone? Like, you're like, I know better than that. Why am I still doing that? Every time. Or sometimes, even this class, we can walk away knowing these things. And then as we go about in our lives, we can act in ways that aren't really in accordance with that. It's like our behavior isn't always in accordance with our values. So it's like, how do we translate that? So that's what Arjuna is asking Krishna here. He's saying that even though I know better, why don't my desires go away? What am I supposed to do with them? I still have them. I'm still acting this way. What am I supposed to do? And Krishna's answer is simple. He's saying, tolerate, tolerate. He's saying, before giving up this body, one should learn to tolerate the urges of desire and anger. And if you can do this, Krishna says, you're a yogi, you're free, you're happy. And this is a tall order, tolerate the urge to say something when I'm hurt, tolerate the urge to eat something when I'm anxious or bored, tolerate the urge to check my phone or to fantasize to avoid something hard I need to face. It's like this is just like, regular day in the life of these things. This is what we do. Urges are hard to tolerate. And they're hard to tolerate because they offer short-term relief from discomfort. We don't like discomfort. And these things are just like flashing red lights right in front of us. Like I don't even know if they have them anymore. Remember those zappers for flies, that had the light and the flies just like fly towards it and then they get zapped. It's like that's what we're doing here in this material existence. It's like we experience some level of discomfort, some level of hurt, and we're just looking for that next thing to relieve us. And instead of relieving us, hopefully it doesn't kill us like the flies, but it oftentimes it brings us lower. Maybe we act out in a way that's we act out of our anger. We're feeling angry and we snap at somebody, or we reach for that pie or that alcohol when we're feeling low or sad, because they're alluring, these things. They're whispering, just do this and you'll feel better. We've all heard those voices. And we've all acted like that. We've all followed that, ran into that fly trap. But here Krishna is inviting us into a deeper freedom. He's inviting us into the kind that comes from choosing truth over relief. Choosing truth over relief. And it's not easy. And Krishna knows that. But he's telling us that we're capable of even more than you think. And he's telling us exactly how. He's not condemning that we have these urges. He's not condemning that this happens to us. We're a fly. We have these little wings and we see a light and we just fly into it, that we're made like that. That's our body. That's our body. That's our mind vehicle. That's what it is. Our body, our mind vehicle. And so Krishna is acknowledging these desires, this anger, cravings, impulses that are just naturally a part of our body. They arise from the body and mind. So as long as we're in this human vehicle, they're going to show up. And this is a little sobering, but it's also hopeful. It means that we're not broken. We're just embodied. We're just embodied. And Krishna's saying that he's not even saying that we're doomed to struggle forever. He's saying that we can win, and he's telling us how. So this is a symptom of the body, and if you're only staying at the mind-body platform, this is how it's going to operate, and this is what's going to happen. But I'm going to offer you a way out of it, and this is how. And he's saying that we can become purified through practice. That once we practice some of these spiritual practices, these urges start to lose their grip. We'll become more steady, more peaceful, more truly happy. And this is, what many of us have experienced in this practice and have continued to experience. And this is kind of like the experiment of even spiritual life. This is kind of how some of us initially see how effective and how helpful spiritual life can be for our material lives. And we kind of buy in and we want more and we want more and we want more. And we just keep seeing how it can make us more steady, more peaceful, more happy. We all carry heavy workloads. We all, most of us have super full schedules. Maybe. And if you really think about it deeply, have you ever noticed that the heaviest weight often comes from within? Like you can have a completely full schedule, all these things to do, and you can just knock them off like crazy. But if something strikes you within, if something makes you feel sad or someone says, criticizes you and you feel bad, it could be like paralyzing. Maybe we'll replay it all day long. Right? And not because we don't have other things to do, but because we're so caught in that hurt, that anger, that urge to prove ourselves, right? Like it could just completely take over ourselves. We could be such productive people, but we get struck with one of these internal things, these internal temporary handicaps, and it's like it could be paralyzing. And this is what Krishna is pointing to. He's saying that real happiness doesn't come from managing our outer lives, but it comes from learning how to meet the powerful inner urges, desire, frustration, the need to be seen a certain way. Right? And these emotions, when they're left unchecked, they add a heavier burden than any job ever could. And I remember this, I used to work as a nuclear engineer for the Navy, and I was in this advanced leadership program where I would work from like 5 a.m. to like 11 p.m. And I was like, that was my thing when I was in my 20s. I was really into it. But if I had like a fight with a boyfriend or like, it was like I couldn't function. I felt like my mind was just like cloudy. I was just like clogged, It just couldn't move. It was so heavy. So this is what happens to us. When we catch one of these things, it just can pull us down. So in this verse, Krishna's reminding Arjuna that he's a warrior. He knows how to stand his ground on his battlefield. That's what he does. He's a protector. He's fierce. But Krishna's saying, use that same strength when inner enemies come, like anger or lust. When they come charging, use that same strength. And that's so many of us too. We want to stand up. There's all these causes that we can commit to and stand up for and serve, and that's great. That's great. But let's not forget our inner enemies as well, because it's not just outside. It's inside, and oftentimes, it's the one that we don't want to look at, or the one that we don't always see. And sometimes we get so even caught up in other people's problems and other things that they're doing wrong that we don't even see it in ourselves. So Krishna is saying if we start with this, we can change from the inside out. It's the easiest and well, it's not the easiest, but it's the best way and the most effective way, I should say the most effective way to create change is by starting from the inside out. It's like become more loving, become more compassionate, become a person that's less triggered. And then when you're around, those people that used to trigger you, they're going to see, oh, something's different here. Something's different here. And maybe over time, you'll start to see a change in their behavior. Just because they're inspired by how you're more open, accepting, vulnerable. And those things kind of rub off on them. And that's the inner fight. And that's the one that, again, we have all these causes that we're fighting for out there. But let's not forget what we need to fight in here, right? This fight's still real. It's just invisible. But if we can learn to take those hits without giving in, we'll be truly victorious. Victorious. So again, as human beings, we naturally seek pleasure. And when our desires are blocked, we feel frustration. And that's normal. But the solution isn't just dry abstinence, like a diabetic giving up sugar and just trying to cope. The Gita's offering something deeper. It says that tolerance and not just white knuckling it, not just completely giving something up, but true inner steadiness, that actually comes from connecting something to something higher, actually makes us happy. And we get there by not depriving ourselves indefinitely, but by replacing this outer pleasure with the higher inner happiness. And this comes from connection with Source, connection to something bigger than yourself. This is how we satisfy this inner happiness. And then we're not desperately searching this external world for something that will make us happy and constantly setting ourselves up for disappointment. Because as we learned in the last class, these things are temporary. They're temporary, or maybe we can't get them, or maybe we get them and we realize they're not really even so great. But if we can get this steady happiness inside from this connection with Source, the externals don't affect us as much. We're not as shaken by them. Something shifts. Self-restraint stops being a matter of willpower and starts flowing from inner fulfillment. Like our cup is full. Our cup is full. So we don't have to go to maybe some of these lower things to fill it up, because we filled it up right from Source. The energy that we once used to fight cravings or control our impulses, it becomes available to meet life's challenges with more clarity and steadiness and grace. This is the process when we connect to something higher. And this is the basis of even like an AA program. You know, you connect to a power higher, bigger than yourselves. And that's how you get out of searching, you know, in these lower frequencies for this short-term satisfaction, this short-term relief by connecting to something bigger. So it's like it's the way in and the way out. You know, the way into a higher connection with source, way into its spiritual level transcendence, and the way out of the bondage that we have by our cravings, by our lower natures. Does anybody want to share anything before we move on to the next points? Okay, so that's kind of like setting up the scene. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it. And the first thing I want to talk about here is that if you think that you have no vices, you probably just haven't looked hard enough. Kind of like when you're cleaning your house and at first everything looks super neat, really nice, but then you move the couch and it's like there's like all these dust bunnies under there. Spiritual life works the same. You know, at the beginning we might feel like I don't really struggle with lust or anger or greed. But when we start doing the inner work, when the light of awareness goes deeper, we start noticing that they were always there, they were just hidden. And this is because these vices, they don't just live on the surface. They operate on different levels. Our consciousness has different levels. They operate in our consciousness and they operate in our subconsciousness. So a conscious vice might look more like snapping at someone when you're mad. You know, you're angry and you choose to act on it. That's a conscious vice. That's going to be pretty obvious that, you know, I'm acting out of anger. I need to tolerate. That's pretty obvious. But a subconscious vice could be when you help someone, but deep down you're hoping they'll praise you. You know, on the surface it looks selfless, but underneath there's a hidden desire for recognition that you might not be even fully aware of. And this happens, I mean, this is so natural for us. You know, we want to do good. We feel like, you know, we're doing selfless service, but there is something inside, there's something deep inside of us. Maybe that, you know, little girl who never got approval, who's now looking for approval from the rest of the world. And that's okay. You know, even though you're doing good, you're on the right track, but just recognize that these vices exist on different levels and they're not always visible to us on the conscious level. And know that, you know, even if you've got yourself fully controlled on a conscious level, that's great. But keep peeling, keep peeling that banana, or onion, I guess rather. Keep peeling that onion, keep looking, because as the more that you go deeper, and you can pull that out, you know, the more that you can unclog what connects that pipe that connects you to source, because those things, they get in the way of authentic, true connection. So the conscious mind, it's shaped by our current choices, our situation, the people we're around, our intention. So when we begin spiritual life and we commit to a daily practice, we'll see that our surface thoughts often start to look cleaner and more peaceful. And this happens, you know, but at a subconscious level, those old patterns like lust, anger, greed, envy, they may still linger, just waiting for the right moment to resurface. You know, a trigger, a lapse in practice, a moment of weakness, and suddenly they're back. And this happens to us all the time. You know, we think like, oh, I thought I got over that, or oh, I thought I was done with that ridiculous family dynamic. And then you're back in that situation and some trigger just brings it right back up and you're right back where you used to be. And you thought you had kind of come out of you because you've been around different people and it hadn't been triggered in that way. You know, so the Gita reminds us that these forces may keep appearing throughout life, but that doesn't mean that we're failing. It just means that we're human and we're still cleaning. And the goal isn't to pretend that they're gone. The goal is to notice when they arise and not get swept away by them. That's real strength. That's spiritual maturity. You know, the fact that they're not in your face anymore, that's good. It means your practice is working. But if they still show up sometimes, that just means you've got more to purify. And that's okay. That's good. That's good because the more that we can clean out, the more that we can purify, the more authentic our connection can be with ourselves, with other people, and with God. So it's good to see that stuff. It's an opportunity to clean it out and to grow in our spiritual life. Because, if you have a pipe and it's completely clogged and you don't know and you never do anything about it, it's not going to work effectively. Nothing's going to get through there. Even if you connect it, it's nothing's going to flow. So we have to clean that out. We have to clean that out, and we do that through these yogic processes. So, does anybody want to share anything about that?
I have a quick share. I
Yeah,
love
please.
how our first day of the retreat, I was like bringing up this very thing, like how, sometimes you're still holding on to these things. And we were all like, well, yeah, we still hold on to that same thing too. We were talking about like past relationships, how it's so hard. Like you think you're over it, but then it still comes up again. And it does, like, and that's okay. It just means it's here at the surface being shown so that we can clear it out again. So, yeah.
Yeah.
This class
And
is like perfect for that today.
yeah, I remember that conversation now. And that's exactly what's happening. And we should choose to see it too as an opportunity like that. Sometimes it's hard in the moment. We're feeling really triggered and we kind of lose clarity. But maybe we can take some time and we can come back and realize I still have some cleaning to do. And that's an opportunity to get to the next level. Because if we don't, it's just going to be there. It's just waiting and hiding under the surface to come out.
Yes. And
And the more that,
sorry.
yeah, no, the more that we can clean out, even the more that we can even reach our full potential as human
Right.
beings, you know?
Relationships are just like an easy one because it's like, you create those bonds and it's hard. It's hard to let go sometimes. But this is with anything. It can be with anything that you think, oh, I got over that. I got over like being triggered when my daughter doesn't want to brush her teeth. I mean, I'm just kind of making that up. But, it's just like keep practicing that, keep practicing it, and eventually you'll learn to respond differently to those situations. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Thank you. Devi Radhika.
I love this topic. I It's like a daily practice almost, and what you're talking about and what this verse is talking about connects with a lot of work we've been doing recently with secondary emotions and sanskaras and the effects that those have on all of our choices, from not just relationships, but food and addictions and career paths, and how a lot of these things that were or still are, depending on where you're at in your journey, subconscious, they really do drive us. Um, and then once you have an opportunity in a safe place with safe people to start to really dig deep and see where those things came from, you are then given tools through these practices to have the choice because you have the awareness. And once you have the awareness, although it's really hard to dig through some of this trauma and some things that are uncomfortable and where they come from, and it's not an easy process, but yet the outcome of it is really ultimate freedom, because when you start to see where your reactions come from and where your triggers are coming from, you ultimately then have the choice of how you either react or how you then respond, and if you even respond. And to me, bringing those kinds of choices and practices and work into my daily life right now is the ultimate freedom, the ultimate peace, the ultimate clarity, because sometimes day-to-day life can be really, really hard. And to not hide and not run and not pick up and not, go to the fridge or whatever my ways of escaping are, to have the tools through these practices, to have the awareness to be able to choose how to lovingly and compassionately be with myself and others. I don't know. I mean, I know some people want to levitate in the mountains and and that's their ultimate, clarity and samadhi and all that. But for me, it's just to have peaceful moments throughout each day and honest and true connections. And this topic really hits right on where we've been working on with Veda and the Chitta cleanse. So I'm, again, just really grateful for all your help.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for sharing, being so sincere, your practice. Mariah, did you have something else to share? Is your hand up from the last time?
No, I have a question for you, Devi Radhika. First off, thank you for that share. It's so beautiful. I resonate so much with that. Like, yeah, having these loving relationships and how to have them, right? Like by bringing awareness to those hidden triggers so we can show up differently for our loved ones and for ourselves and for Krishna, My question, I don't know if you mentioned it. I missed like your very, very first part of your share because I was getting my daughter ready, but what what would you say are like the best practices to bring awareness to these hidden motives? Um, so like I have in mind, one of my biggest ones is just like journal reflecting, but are there other practices that you do to help get to that point of awareness, or do we just wait till they come up? Or would you say like journals and reflective questions are like the best way?
That's such a great question. I do feel sometimes if we are ever like our hearts are connected, even though I don't think I've never met you. And I feel that way with all of you. I mean, for me, my journey, my path, I've always had a level of awareness of where things were coming from. Um, but it wasn't until really in my 50s, quite recently, the last 5 years or so, that through yoga, through the asana practice, through then the connection of body, mind, and spirit, through bhakti, through, my teacher, Vedaji, and part of his technique is definitely journaling. And there are specific questions that he works around uncovering some of our first fears. In yoga, there's three steps or three stages in our lives, and within those three stages, we really dig deep in the Chitta cleanse process that he developed and worked with all kinds of, spiritual leaders and psychologists and everything to get into what is that original fear, and then off of that original fear, what does the secondary emotions come and how does that affect? And once we have that awareness, it's specific journaling questions. Once we have that awareness, then we're moved from the journaling, from the sharing, from the awareness, little by little towards, okay, let me pause, let me take a step back. I know where this reaction's coming from. And for me, a lot of times I'd have the reaction and then I'd be like, oops, like once I had the awareness, the pause part is really hard. It's like, yeah, I got it. And then I'm like, oh my God, I just like completely lost it for no apparent reason. Oh, I remember the reason. And it really is just kind of that grace, that humility, that self-love, and really a major part of that process, at least in what work I've been doing with Veda and other people have done with him through the cleanse, is a lot of journaling. But he does have specific steps. Reconciliation then is guided with some of those people that gave us things that, although I always knew where they were coming from, and I always said like, oh, I forgive my parents for doing this, or I forgive my parents for doing that, or this and that. There's, for me, with time and with guidance and with the practice of journaling and teaching and going to retreats and all, the things that we've come together as a sangha,
I've learned that there's a big difference between awareness and forgiveness and awareness and surrendering. And for a long time I thought, oh yeah, I've forgiven everybody who's wronged me. I forgave myself for wronging myself, this and that. And little by little, keeping journaling, keeping connected, keeping your spirituality, keeping your reading, keeping your sadhana, more and more awareness comes, and then more and more growth can come from that. I'm not really sure that answers your question, but
Yeah, that
that's
was,
how I can sum up the last 50 something years of my
yeah, sounds like I need to take that course with him.
life. Thank you for asking.
But that's also so beautiful. And yeah, that was one of my reflections this weekend too, was like, my mind knows. I can tell my mind all day long, and the mind, emotional body, the heart takes longer. So I
Yeah.
forgive. I can tell myself I'm over it. I can tell myself, it's for a better reason. This is, Krishna has a plan. But for the heart to believe it and for the emotional body to heal, it just takes more time and more practice. Yeah. Thank you for.
Yeah. So nice. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the Gita teaches us that this tolerance is what's standing between that trigger and doing something that we'll regret. And it's that moment of tolerance. And we can all feel it, in our bodies. Like if you're triggered and you're feeling, anxious or hot, or you just can't wait to go like, chew that person out, or it's like insatiable, to run to the fridge and get that piece of chocolate. Like whatever it is, we do experience that. It feels like there's like something's pulling us, or it feels like we're not acting out of love. It feels like we're angry, and as soon as we're angry, we want to go do something. And it's recognizing those triggers, recognizing those symptoms of the body and mind, and intentionally just taking that break. And the Gita teaches us turning to these spiritual practices. Maybe you're chanting, maybe you're sitting in a kirtan, maybe you're reading some scripture, maybe you're journaling, just taking that pause and plugging in to the source of love so that you can come back and act from that place of love. And we all, I think, as we go through our days in our lives, there's times that we can say, I did that really well. I 100% acted from love. I reflected that love that I get from source. I reflected that love, even though it wasn't being reflected back to me. I still stayed strong in that. And then there's times where we're like, I really screwed that one up. I was acting out of my ego. I was acting because I wanted to prove that I was right and this person was wrong. And it's just trying to get to the place where we're acting more from that place of love than acting from that place of fear or ego or anger. And then the difference is taking that break, taking that space between, the trigger and reaction, that space of tolerance, just to be, just to connect, and then see how you show up after that. Because the urges are going to show up. It's going to happen to us. Where none of us are perfected beings here, it's going to happen to us. But just because it shows up, it doesn't mean that we have to act on it. And this space of tolerance, it gives us that room to pause, to reflect, and to choose something better. And um, when we're upset, we can wait instead of lashing out. That's not weakness. That's strength. And when I think of my own life, I think of examples where I've done this really well, and I think of examples where I've done this really not well. And I remember a few years ago, I had a fight with my sister. We were on a family vacation. It was like my mom, my sister, her kids, and then me and my husband. And one of her kids are kind of like that age where they're just kind of complainy. They don't really want to do what they just kind of want to do what they want to do. Um and so my husband and I had decided that we wanted to go hiking just on our own one day. That's the other thing too. They can't really do long hikes. So my husband and I had decided that we wanted to go, and my mom decided she wanted to go with us. And my sister was upset about that, and she was like pretty pouty, um, pretty like kind of like digging into it. And for a while, I'd say maybe like 20, 30 minutes, I'd practice this tolerance, just not even saying anything. Like she just, like the provoking, I just didn't say anything, didn't say anything. Finally, on the way home, she said something like, "This is a family vacation, and I just feel like you guys are leaving us out." And I was just like, just instantly triggered back to my, childhood relationship with my sister. And I was like, well, to be honest, there's just a lot of complaining. And it like I know I like I really thought about it too, like what I wanted to say, because she just kept looking for a reason, just kept looking for a reason. And so I said that, but I was also triggered and just tired of her like guilt trip, and I played into it. I felt guilty, and this just set her off. And then it was like wildfire for like the rest of the day. It was just between her and I, it was just wildfire. And me feeling guilty for not accommodating her, her feeling left out, and it just got so out of control. She didn't talk to me for maybe a year, maybe 2 years. I think it was maybe close to 2 years, when I should have just tolerated it. I should have just, instead of feeding into that, I should have just tolerated it, because I knew there's nothing wrong with, us wanting to do something different. I knew there's nothing wrong with it, but I completely played into it, and it just rolled downhill. And how differently things would have been if I just would have tolerated it. I could have standed my ground and acted more in accordance with my values. It would have been an opportunity, but I didn't. I got triggered, and it just set me off. So the lesson for me was just what we're saying here. When you're not situated in love, don't act. When what you want to do is just rip that person apart, or just communicate your stance just so that you can show that you're right. Just wait. It doesn't mean that you can't do that later if that's still what you want to do, but at least give yourself some time and then decide if that's still what you want to do. Because if you're not situated in that love, it's going to bring you down. It's going to bring you down. And when we're situated in love, when we approach something with a person, when we're situated in love, we're approaching them because we genuinely want to figure out a solution so that we can be closer. That's our motive. We want to say, "Hey, I'm feeling like this. It's making me feel like, we're not as close as we were, and it's really hurting my feelings. Like, I really want to be close, but I'm still feeling like this. What can we do about this?" And sometimes it takes time to step away from the trigger and to kind of even like assimilate, even like digest that, so that then you can show up like that. You can show up in a way that's like, this is how I'm feeling, and I really care about this relationship, and I want it to be better. And if not, then just tolerate your feelings, tolerate your triggers, and just wait until you can show up in that way. And sometimes, we've talked about this before, you can't approach every person like that. Every person is not going to want to work with you. And that's a lesson too, to learn. For me, even now, my sister and I are talking again, and it's great. But it's such a lesson for me. I think I always wanted my sister and I to be closer than we were. And it's almost just like accepting that maybe we just won't be, and that that's okay. And that like, that's not something that has to be forced or pushed, that it could just be okay. And I'm much less emotionally invested. And sometimes, these lessons, it kind of takes that. We kind of have to learn that. So when this happens to us, it can actually be a sign that we're a little bit disconnected from God or our higher purpose. It doesn't mean that we have to spiral into self-indulgence, but we can think of it like a rumble strip on the highway, just a warning that we're drifting. We don't have to panic or beat ourselves up. We can just steer back. Like, I wish I would have done that with my sister. Even after I made that first comment, there's just a lot of complaining, and she just like blew up. Why did I feel like I needed to blow up after that? It could just be like, oh, this is not going the right way. Tolerate. Just keep it shut. Just wait until you can show up and you feel that, because when we really want to push our stance, we really want to push our desire, we're not showing up with love. When we want to force it, when we want to prove to that person that we're right and they're wrong, we're not at that place yet. Love is it's flows. It's soft. It's it doesn't feel that intense, passionate energy. That's not showing up with love. So we just might have to go back, remember a bit of philosophy, take a moment to pray, journal, do some kirtan, whatever helps bring you back to center. In this practice, it can be kind of a spiritual reflex. The more we use it, the more calm, steady, and resilient we can become. We can become more self-aware. If we just keep our heart aimed in the right direction. So if we fast forward to this weekend with my mom came to this retreat with me to take care of my daughter, which is amazing and so nice. But there's times that I still get triggered by my mom. I feel it. And we had it was very mild. It was just like, a little bit back and forth that wasn't like super loving. And I walked away from that. And as I was walking to the temple, I was thinking, when I get back, I'm going to tell her, what I don't like about her. This is what I'm thinking as I'm walking in the temple. I get to the temple, I sit in kirtan for like 2 hours. And it completely changes. I actually decide to apologize to her for feeling triggered and tell her how much I appreciate her. And then after that, communicate why I was feeling frustrated, but from a place of love like this. And I did that, went back and I did that. And it was so much better. It was like she responded, like she didn't even really think it was a big deal at all, which it wasn't, but inside me it was because I felt myself boiling up. And then she even kind of took some responsibility for some of her side, which is like not something that I have really seen my mom do. And it was so nice. Like I felt more connected to her. I felt like my love increased for her. It felt more like progress. So we can, even if we start to veer off the road a little bit, we can see it like a rumble strip. Just take some time, connect, and come back when you're feeling like you're feeling love for that person. That's how you know when you're acting out of love, if you can actually get to the place where you feel love for them and not this resentment and that is kind of deeply rooted inside of you. Does anybody want to share anything about that? Oh, Katie G, I didn't see your hand was up.
No worries. I just put it up a minute ago. Thanks so much. I was thinking a couple things, to put it a silly way, like a little bit of fake it till you make it. Like lately, it's come to my mind, which has been helpful to be like, hey, can you act like a devotee, please? I can like in my own mind, like this, wait a minute. Can you at least try to like fake it till you make it a little? Like this is not devotee like mindset or actions or and that's been kind of helpful just in my own mind, like, whoa, hold on, this is not how a devotee like is guided to act, and that's been
Right.
really helpful. And then it's also, I think, sometimes very challenging for me to like balance it with the other side where we've also been guided to like not just take repeated disrespect forever, and then eventually, in some situations it's more of like a back away kind of jam. And I realized like it's been helpful to in some moments turn to our more senior spiritual teachers. For example, like I know Rukmini wants me to get a different job, to be completely open, and that's really helpful, just to know, like, wait a minute, like I can still show up and act like a good person, or try to be, because of course that's the goal, is we're faking it till we make it. But then also to realize that balance of like, when it's like time to kind of back away as well.
Yeah, when our like
So
emotional investment is not serving us, and maybe it's bringing us
yeah, or
down.
just that there are some instances where like, I mean, clearly, like we're not talking about like people who are being abused or like repeatedly mistreated. These are the instances I'm talking about, that like it's good to get some guidance, in my experience, from like more senior devotees, and
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
all of us, each other. So yeah, thanks. That's what's just going through my mind a little.
Yeah, thank you. It's great because we sometimes don't even see it. We're just pushing so hard, pushing so hard. We don't see that it's really affecting us in that way. And yeah, maybe that space would be better. I felt that happened organically with my sister. I was so emotionally vested. And after a couple of years of not talking, I was like, why am I so emotionally invested? I don't need to care this much, Not that I don't need to care about the relationship, but like, why did I need to feel like I needed to prove to
Yeah.
her? Just let it go. Just let her have her own feelings. I don't need to take that on. And it was just like, when you're in it, it's hard to see sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Stacy. Good to see you, Stacy. Happy you're here.
Thank you so much. It's so I missed the show. I really miss being here. So I'm so happy you're back. Um, well, both of what you shared and then Katie shared, and I felt like, um, yeah, like we're five kids, and we're very age range very far apart, but it's so true. Like when I hold on to things, like, and I tell this to my son, I said. He goes, I don't can't believe so and so treated you that way because he's so protective of me. And I said, I said, Jaden, I could be. He's like, I don't know how. He says, I don't know how you continue to talk to this person or you continue to even be nice. And I said, because one, you know, it's a spirit. He's a spirit soul, but which my son doesn't totally understand. So I have to go deeper, like easier, and just say, like if I have a resentment, and he knows it because this is something I say all the time. I said, "Who's hurting if I'm resenting?" And he goes, "You." I said, "Right." I said, "So I let it go." I said, and hope, and actually pray for that person to um, maybe find an easier path because they get angry so fast. So I find, it's with not just my family, but with devotees that I feel like, oh, I've been doing this for so long and they just came around and how come they're doing so and so service on blah blah blah. And then I start to not like them. And it's like, you know what? Let that, like, I have to tell myself, let that go. And like, there's a particular person, and I'm going to finish because I know somebody else wants to share. But there's a person who's was a Brahmin and is now a householder. But the point is this person shares a lot of things, but I feel doesn't treat me with love and kindness, right? Doesn't have that. And that's his own journey. But what I do is I listen to four of his classes that were 2 hours each over the weekend and learned so much. And I was able to let go of that like anger and I can't believe you're Brahmin and you're not treating me with love and kindness and patience. And it's like, okay. And so actually putting myself right in front of him, listening to all of the wonderful information that he shares and all of that he offers to us as devotees, everybody, I was able to let go of it. And like even my husband said to me, "You're listening to blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Wow." He was like super surprised. So
It's
yeah,
wonderful.
it's thank you for sharing it. It's something that is, I think, a constant work that we probably have to do. I know for me, I do.
Yeah, and to just sum all of that up, it's like just because somebody's not treating you with love and kindness doesn't mean that you need to project back to them how they're treating you. You can connect to source and you can treat them with love, but that also doesn't mean that you keep yourself in that situation, in that environment, because that can also wear on you and be unhealthy. Like you have to be at a pretty high level to continue just pouring love into them, connecting to your source and pouring that into them instead of reflecting what they're putting out, instead of reflecting that back. We want to connect to source and reflect that back, but at some point we have to even know, our limits, and it's like maybe it's time to step back, or maybe to your point, it can be healed, and that's wonderful. That's great too. But yeah, thank you, Stacy. Stella, please share.
Um, yeah, you brought up that, sometimes tolerance means stepping away. Um, and if it's I think a lot of times when people hear this philosophy, like you just have to tolerate, they think, oh, I'm just going to stand here and take all this abuse, like no, part of tolerance is to understand that that person's suffering and you need to step out of their combat zone and pray from a distance, respect from a distance. I find that has really helped me a lot to still consider the person, but step away and pray. You can't just step away because then you're not. But like as if you stick with this path long enough, you're able, I think, to see a little. You could. It's like with your third eye, like you see them for who they really are, which is Krishna's beloved. And sometimes that's been my meditation when someone's a real, hard ass person, and I step away and I pray, but I also like to think, wow, there's something like it's almost amusing. There's something about this person that Krishna really loves, like they might be covered, whatever, but wow, Krishna loves that person. Cannot see that for the life of me, but he does. So it really helps me tolerate when I can, remember Krishna's perspective on someone else. And I'm not talking about
Yeah.
family members. I'm talking about like maybe a toxic personality that you have to be with at work or somewhere else, or somebody you just don't get along with, who's maybe not even abusive, but um, you don't have to, be a doormat ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you addressed that a little bit. Thank you.
No, that's perfect. That's so nice. And the other thing we can do is like Stacy was saying, even find a way to appreciate them. Like maybe we
Yes.
don't appreciate this aspect of them, but maybe there's something that we can really appreciate, and that can kind of help us even reframe. And at the same
Yeah.
time, not not subject ourselves to the side of them that we don't appreciate so much. But yeah, thank you. So nice. So just the last couple points here um, to keep in mind. Just because we're growing spiritually doesn't mean that the fires will stop coming. Right? It just means that we'll get better at handling them. So as we're getting thrown these challenges, just because you're spiritual doesn't mean that you're not going to get triggered, because you will. But you're learning the tools to handle them, and you're better equipped. Each time you get triggered, you might have a little bit more space for that tolerance. You might, and you'll see, you might just improve a little bit more, you know. So I'm gonna skip a lot of this because we only have a couple minutes left. But Krishna's Krishna asks us if this is possible. Is this possible for us? And the answer is yes, it's possible if we're willing to try, to tolerate, to hang in there. We should know that the rewards are real. This peace, this steadiness, genuine happiness. Most people pour their energy into chasing desires, falling in love, chasing success, risking everything to get what will make them happy. But we can choose to put that same energy into going beyond desire. And this is the key here. Tolerate first, transcend second. We can't artificially make desires or unhealthy narratives or behaviors disappear, but we can tolerate the urges to act in that way. We can create the space to tolerate the urges. And while we tolerate, we can persevere with our spiritual practices. If we become overly obsessed with just eliminating these urges or being somewhere we aren't, this can take the focus away from our spiritual practices. But if we try to tolerate, just create that space between trigger and response, tolerate, and in that space, redirect our focus, we'll gradually become purified, and these things will naturally disappear. So tolerate means enduring their presence without succumbing to the influence. So enduring their presence without succumbing to the influence. So for this, we need to understand that by focusing on such desires, we'll strengthen them. But by focusing on God, we'll nourish ourselves. And when we're nourished, others are nourished. Just like in the example of, with my mom, My first trigger, the way I wanted to respond was so different after I sat in that kirtan for a couple hours. I was nourished. And then I wanted to show up in a way that was nourishing. So if we can tolerate this while staying connected with God, we'll become stronger and the desires will become weaker. So spiritual life, it's not about avoiding the hard work. It's about redirecting the hard work inward towards purifying the heart and transforming how we respond. And it's challenging, but the result is way more fulfilling than any temporary high. Material desires, they're hard to attain, hard to enjoy, even harder to hold on to. But spiritual joy, it's lasting, it's fresh. It only gets better with time. So let's become determined to tolerate. That's how we begin to turn inward. That's how real freedom starts. It's empowering ourselves, this tolerance. It's empowering yourself. It doesn't mean just like Stella said that we become rugs, but we just become a little bit more empowered to act in line with our higher values. This is where real freedom starts. Right? So just to sum up what we talked about today, the problem is that our urges feel stronger than our values. Krishna's solution is tolerate the desire, don't act on it. And the path is to practice this detachment, to build strength in your relationship with God. And from that, the outcome is freedom, right? A peaceful, steady heart that's no longer pulled by every wave. So we don't have to be perfect or never feel anything. It's just that we can learn to pause, to notice the wave rising and decide not to be pulled under. Every moment of tolerance is a victory, one that brings us closer to real peace and spiritual freedom. So he's not asking us to suppress what we feel. He's teaching us how to respond with clarity rather than react with impulse. And the more that we practice that, the stronger we get. Until one day, what once shook us no longer even has any power over us. That's happened with my dad now. My dad and I went through this whole thing. I just got a few text messages the other day about, how ridiculous my practice is. It didn't affect me at all. I didn't even respond. It was like, okay, my poor dad. We can get to that place. This is how we grow from being controlled by the mind to becoming masters of it. With God at the center, just guiding us every step of the way. So that was today's. That was 523 tolerance. Just try to, as you go through your week, try to notice when you're triggered, when you're getting hot, when you're getting into a place where you're feeling a lot of rush. Like I want to do this. I want to tell this person how I feel. When you want to snap, just create some space, plug into source, and come back and see how you feel. That's this week's challenge. Anybody else want to share anything right before we leave?
I just want to share one recommendation. A book that I think is so helpful with this topic is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, because it gives you the tools to stop, observe the situation, really get in touch with your values, feelings, and needs, and then communicate them in a very soft way that isn't from a place of trigger. And he breaks it down to the T of certain words, even the word itself just has that judgment in it, right? So he breaks it down these are words that you can use to speak that take ownership of your feelings and you're responsible for them, whereas other words they don't. A lot of people are well, I'm triggered by your action, and it's no, I'm triggered because I have a feeling and a need and a request and an expectation. And so if anybody ever gets that book, it is so good. Read it again, read it 3 times, and really try and apply it. It's huge for that. I always refer back to that because it's just that was huge for me. And then you can communicate those things, you can still communicate with people. And if they don't reciprocate, then okay, then this is definitely time to step away,
So
Anyway,
nice. Perfect. Thank you.
So Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. It's so good.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. We'll see you Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Hare